Red dirt settles over a silent, unmoving shape. A figure lies on the ground, sculpted from the clay, perfectly formed but completely still. Eat fruit and name the animals. We treat the breath of life like batteries being dropped into a toy. It only breathes the atmosphere of its origin. When the layers of your soul actually align, something incredible happens. The mind clears, the body submits, the spirit leads. You sit with a grieving friend. You do not speak. You hold their shaking hand. Your nefesh wants to run away from the heavy, uncomfortable silence, but your neshama anchors you to the chair. You give your money to a stranger. You empty your own wallet. Your nefesh screams about scarcity, but your neshama knows the economy of God. When the neshama drives the chariot of your life, you become fully human. The ancient Jewish mystics believed the neshama is a literal lamp. Proverbs 20:27 says, "The neshama of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all the innermost parts of the belly." A lamp, a light source, a beacon placed deep inside the ribcage. When that lamp is lit, it illuminates every dark corner of your motives. It exposes your pride. It burns away your ego. It keeps you connected to the mind of the Creator. But a lamp unplugged goes dark. A breath cut off becomes a gasp. And that is exactly the tragedy that unfolds next. The disaster in the garden was not just about a piece of fruit. It was about what happened to the air. We assume he is just another animal, only with a slightly better brain. But if you look at the ancient Hebrew text, the shadows lengthen across the garden. The leaves rustle in the cooling air. A hand reaches up, snaps a piece of fruit from the branch, and brings it to the mouth. The teeth break the skin. The sweet juice runs over the tongue. Genesis chapter 3 gives us the collapse of the human architecture. God had warned the man that on the day he ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, he would certainly die. But read the text closely. The man eats the fruit. The woman eats the fruit. And then they sew scratchy fig leaves together. They hide among the heavy trunks of the trees. They walk out of the garden and live for hundreds of years, planting crops, building shelters, and giving birth to children. They do not die that day, not biologically. Their nefesh continues to pump warm blood through their veins. Their lungs continue to pull oxygen from the atmosphere. Their ruach continues to drive them forward into the harsh, unforgiving wilderness outside Eden. The biological machine of survival keeps running perfectly, but something else dies. The death in the garden is not a biological failure. It is a spiritual severing. When the human beings choose rebellion, the Holy of Holies, inside their chest, goes dark. The neshama, the pure, untainted breath of the Creator, the lamp of the Lord, loses its direct, unhindered connection to its source. You realize that reading misses the most staggering part of the story. The breath in Genesis 2 is not just a biological engine. The channel is cut. The divine frequency drops to a deafening static. They are suddenly left with brilliant minds and powerful bodies. But the highest room in the temple is suddenly empty. The neshama does not evaporate entirely, but it shatters. It becomes a broken mirror inside the chest. It reflects just enough light to make them long for heaven, just enough morality to make them feel crushing guilt. But it lacks the power to actually govern the flesh. They become incredibly intelligent animals, driven by the nefesh, haunted by the ghost of a neshama they can no longer fully access. This explains the absolute devastation of human history. When a creature with the intellectual capacity of a god is driven entirely by the survival instincts of a beast, the result is endless violence. A wolf will only kill what it needs to eat for the afternoon. But a human being, operating with a darkened neshama and an active nefesh, will burn down an entire city just to protect their own pride. The breath was meant to govern the dirt. When the breath is choked out, the dirt takes over. For thousands of years, the Hebrew scriptures document this tragic imbalance. Prophets rise and fall. Kings build massive temples of stone, while the temples of their own bodies remain plunged in darkness. The divine breath visits selectively, resting on certain people for specific moments. But the permanent, intimate indwelling of Eden is lost. Humanity wanders through the centuries, waiting for someone to come. It is the transfer of a completely different kind of existence. To feel the weight of this moment and turn the light back on. And then, a new set of scrolls is written. A man steps out of an empty tomb, walks into a locked room in Jerusalem, and does something that has not happened since the red dirt of Genesis. The language changes. The architecture does not. The writers of the New Testament shift from Hebrew to first century Greek. The ink looks different on the papyrus. The alphabet changes, but the deep map of the human soul remains exactly the same. The nefesh becomes the psyche. This is where we get the word psychology. It is the mind tied to the flesh. It is the natural, biological life. The higher breath, the Neshama, becomes the pneuma. It means wind. It means spirit. It is the eternal frequency. Same dirt, same breath, same war. Now look at the Gospel of John, chapter 20. 10 men are hiding. The heavy wooden door is bolted shut. The air in the room is stale with panic. They are terrified of the Roman guards outside. Their nefesh is screaming for survival. Their bodies are flooded with raw adrenaline. Jesus appears in the center of the room. He does not give a sermon. He does not hand them a scroll. The text says, he breathes on them. He physically exhales. You have to look closely at the exact word the writer uses for breath, because he has options. In the Hebrew language, you can hear the actual sound of the breath in the quiet room. And he says, receive the Holy Spirit. Receive the pneuma. The Greek word John uses for breathes on is emphiso. It is a shockingly rare word. In fact, it only appears one other time in the entire Greek translation of the ancient Old Testament. Genesis chapter 2. When God breathes into the dirt, John is connecting the dots for his readers. He is holding up a giant, flashing sign. He is telling you exactly what Jesus is doing in that locked room. Jesus is not just offering them comfort. He is not giving them a new theology degree. He is performing a second Genesis. The exhale in the upper room is not a metaphor. It is a resuscitation. He is restoring the lost connection. He is blowing the dust off the broken lamp inside the human chest and lighting the flame of the Neshama once again. He is giving humanity back the exact piece of the divine that was choked out in the garden. The Holy of Holies is being reopened. The highest room in the temple is finally occupied again. The spiritual lung expands. The true human wakes up. Suddenly, ordinary fishermen become fearless. Suddenly, terrified cowards stand in front of Roman tribunals. There are several words for the invisible forces that animate the world. There is a word for the wind that sweeps across the dark waters in Genesis 1 and refuse to back down. They do not care if their nefesh is killed, because their neshama is fully alive. The biological survival instinct is completely overridden by the eternal reality of the spirit. But receiving the breath is only the first step. The real question is what happens when you actually let that breath dictate how you walk through your own life. You sit in the driver's seat of your car, your hands gripping the cold, synthetic leather of the steering wheel. The traffic in front of you is a solid, unmoving wall of glowing red brake lights. You feel your jaw clench. Your heart rate ticks upward. Your nefesh is evaluating this moment as a threat to your territory and your survival, demanding that you lay your hand on the horn and scream into the sealed glass box of your vehicle. But right there, in the middle of a mundane Tuesday commute, you have a choice to make about which room of your temple is going to lead. This is what living from the inside out actually looks like. It is the deliberate, painful practice of letting the breath govern the dirt. Every day, you are faced with 100 microscopic decisions that determine the unseen architecture of your life. A coworker takes credit for the heavy, tedious work you did on a project. There is a word for the basic life force, the animating energy that keeps a bird flying or a lion running, and the blood rushes hot to your face. Your ruach wants to violently reassert your dominance in the room. Your nefesh wants to tear, them down to protect your own fragile ego. But a quiet voice in the Holy of Holies inside your chest whispers a terrifying word: humility. When you choose to hold your tongue, your nefesh screams in protest because it feels like a defeat. The anxiety tightening your stomach is not a biological malfunction. It is the friction of a holy collision. It is your basic survival instinct fighting against the eternal breath that knows your Creator holds all authority. When you choose to pause, to breathe deeply, to release your white-knuckled grip on your own reputation, you are literally exercising the Neshama. You are flexing the muscle of the divine breath. You feel this same war when you sit in a quiet room, completely alone, and place your phone face down on the hard wooden desk. Your nefesh immediately panics. It demands stimulation. It demands the harsh blue light, the endless scrolling, the cheap dopamine to convince itself it is still alive and connected to the pack. But if you sit through the panic, something else wakes up. If you endure the silence, the dust finally settles. The lamp flickers on. If you are in a season where you feel constantly exhausted, constantly triggered, and constantly reacting to everything around you, it might be because but when God leans over the dust of the earth, He does not use the word for basic life, are living entirely on the bottom floor of your own existence. You are treating yourself like an animal that just needs more sleep, more food, and more comfort. But a human being cannot be satisfied by simply feeding the dirt. The higher soul is starving. The lamp is running out of oil. To live as a true human, you have to allow the eternal breath to dictate how you use your hands, how you spend your time, and what words cross your lips when you are angry. But this daily friction is only the rehearsal, because there is a moment coming when the biological engine will finally shut down for good. The Creator formed a silent shape from the damp red dirt, and a vessel waited for the divine. The animals scattered through the thick brush, driven by biology, and the bottom floor of existence was occupied. The breath of life rushed down a human windpipe, and a temple of consciousness was suddenly lit. A piece of fruit was eaten in the cooling shadows, and the Holy of Holies went completely dark. A savior exhaled in a locked room in Jerusalem, and the shattered lamp was finally reignited. He does not give the man what he gave the animals. He breathes something else, something heavy. A hand grips a steering wheel in the chaos of a Tuesday, and the war between flesh and spirit is fought again. The biological engine of a human body finally fails, and the eternal breath returns to the one who gave it. Same dirt, same breath. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the proximity in the garden. The Creator leaning so close to the damp soil, face to face with the unmoving clay, not shouting a command from a distance, not throwing down a lightning bolt of energy to jumpstart a biological machine, exhaling his own neshama straight into the fragile windpipe of a human being. If you are in a season where you feel like you are just surviving, where your nefesh is exhausted and your life feels reduced to a frantic series of reactions, pause. You do not need another life hack to make the dirt more comfortable. You need to remember what you are carrying. You are not a biological machine running out of battery. You are a temple holding a piece of the divine. The highest room is open, and it is waiting for you to step inside and sit in the quiet. If this reached something in you, subscribe, leave a comment, something that carries a piece of the breather hidden inside of it. It is a word that will completely change how you view your own mind. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who feels overwhelmed by the friction of their own life. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. And may the God who has never once stopped breathing His life into the dust fill your deepest spaces with His absolute presence and bring your entire being into perfect, holy alignment. You can smell the damp earth. The sun beats down on skin that has never actually felt warmth. There is no heartbeat thumping in the chest, your own deep consciousness. And that quiet, lingering ache you sometimes feel when you look up at the night sky. To understand what wakes up in the dirt, you have to understand the ancient anatomy of the human spirit. If you walk into a modern medical school and open an anatomy textbook, you will find a map of everything you are, You will see the branching red rivers of the circulatory system. You will feel the weight of the heavy, dense muscle of the heart printed on the page. You will see the fragile, gray folds of the brain. It is a complete inventory of the human machine, cataloged down to the cellular level. But if you ask an ancient Hebrew thinker for a map of the human being, they would draw you something completely different. We live in a culture that treats the inner life as a single, fuzzy concept. We use the word soul as a catch-all container for everything that is not bones and blood. If you feel an emotion, it is your soul. If you have a thought, it is your soul. If you survive physical death, it is your soul. We lump all of human consciousness into one generic bucket. That is not how the writers of the Bible saw it. The soul is not a single balloon floating inside your chest. There is no pulse echoing in the wrists. The ribcage does not rise or fall. Around this shape, the world is already loud with life. It is a layered architecture of consciousness. In the ancient Near East, neighboring nations believed the gods made humans out of the blood of slain monsters, just to be slave labor. The inner life of a human did not matter. You were essentially a biological tractor built to harvest crops for lazy deities. But the Hebrew text claimed something radical. It claimed that humans were constructed as living temples. And a temple is not just one room. A temple has an outer courtyard, an inner sanctuary, and a holy of holies. To the ancient Hebrew mind, your unseen life has the exact same structure. It is a spectrum of animation that reaches from the raw dirt all the way up to the throne room of God. They used three very specific, distinct Hebrew words to describe these different levels of reality. Three words that our English translations almost always flatten into just soul or spirit or breath, completely erasing the profound blueprint of what is actually happening inside of you. The tragedy is that most people today are living entirely on the bottom floor of this architecture. They are consuming, reacting, and surviving, completely unaware that there is a higher room locked inside their own chest. To find that room, you have to understand the three words. And you have to start with the floor you share with the animals. Birds scatter through the canopy. Beasts of the field push through the heavy brush. They are breathing, moving, consuming. They have biology. They have survival. Picture a shepherd standing in the ancient hills of Judea. A newborn lamb stumbles in the dirt, bleeding for milk. A cold wind bites the skin of the shepherd's face. The heavy olive branches bend and snap in the sudden gale. He watches the physical bodies. He feels the invisible weather. He knows there are different layers of reality moving through the world at the exact same time. Now open the Hebrew text. You see the exact same layers. The first level of the soul is nephesh. It is your biological drive. The word literally translates to throat or neck. It is the craving for water. It is the deep hunger for food. It is the fierce instinct to stay alive at all costs. The text uses it for every living creature. A fish has a nephesh. A dog has a nephesh. You have a nephesh. When a hawk dives to catch a mouse, that is the nephesh running perfectly. It is not sinful. It is simply biology. You feel your own nephesh when you are utterly exhausted. You feel it when you panic. It is the engine of survival. It lives in the blood. The second level is ruach. Ruach is power. Ruach is wind. It is the unseen energy pushing the world forward. You feel it in a violent storm. You feel it in a burning anger. But this shape in the dirt is different. It is waiting for something else. Genesis chapter 2 gives us the tight camera angle on this moment. You feel it in sudden, overwhelming joy. When a musician plays until their fingers bleed, that is ruach. It is the passion that overtakes the physical body. It is the energy of an army marching in unison. It is power in motion. It lives in the chest. Animals possess a nephesh. The earth possesses a ruach. But humans possess a third word. The word is Neshama. It is the higher soul. It is the seat of the intellect. It is the moral compass. It is the capacity to look up at the silent stars and ask why they are even there. The nephesh asks, What will I eat? The Ruach asks. What will I conquer? The Neshama asks. Who am I? When you sit alone in a quiet room and suddenly feel the crushing weight of eternity, that is your Neshama. When you choose to forgive someone who completely shattered your heart, that is your Neshama. When you refuse to tell a lie, even when the lie would save your reputation, that is your Neshama. It is the frequency of the divine. The Neshama is not a byproduct of evolution. It is a piece of the Creator. It is the part of you that does not care about survival. The text says that God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, because it knows it is immortal. It is the part of you that craves justice. Because it remembers the throne room of God, it is the Holy of Holies inside the human temple. Which brings us back to the silent clay figure lying in the red dirt. Because the Creator is about to do something he has never done before. He is about to bridge the gap between the dust and the heavens. Look again at the scene in Genesis chapter 2. The garden is planted. The rivers are rushing over stones. The animals are scattering through the thick brush. Driven by their nefesh, their pure biological instinct. But the human form lies empty on the ground. The anatomy is physically perfect. The veins are mapped. The brain is fully sculpted inside the skull. But it is completely silent. It is just shaped mud. If the sudden realization that you are carrying a three-tiered temple inside your chest is shifting how you see yourself, you are exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the Creator leans over the soil. He does not speak life into this form from a distance. And the man became a living soul. Most people read this scene and assume they know exactly what is happening. When he wanted the oceans to gather, he commanded them from afar. When he wanted the stars to burn, he spoke them into the empty blackness. But here, the text paints a picture of staggering physical intimacy. He gets close. You have to imagine the absolute proximity face to face with the damp red dirt. And he exhales. The ancient Hebrew text says he breathed into his nostrils the Neshmat Chayim, the breath of life. He imparts the Neshama. He does not merely spark the nefesh to make the man hungry. He does not merely inject the ruach to make him powerful. He exhales his own Neshama straight into the fragile vessel of clay. And the moment that breath rushes down the windpipe and expands the lungs, a completely unprecedented kind of life begins on the earth. The chest rises. The eyes open. But those eyes do not just process light and shadow the way a hawk's eyes do. They perceive meaning. The mind activates. But it does not just map the terrain for the most efficient food source. It recognizes beauty. The man looks at the canopy of trees and feels a sudden sense of awe. Because the invisible architecture of the higher soul has just come online. We read it as a simple story of biological ignition. We imagine the Creator leaning over the clay, delivering a kind of divine CPR. The ancient rabbis taught a profound concept about this exact verse. They said that whoever exhales from their innermost being. When God gave the Neshama, he was not creating a new force out of nothing. He was extending a piece of himself into the human container. The Neshama is not an organ you grow. It is a presence you host. It is the frequency of heaven localized inside a human mind. This is why you are capable of deep, agonizing empathy. This is why you are capable of weeping over a piece of music, or laying down your own life to save a stranger. Your biology does not want to sacrifice itself. Your nefesh only wants to survive. But the breath inside of you remembers where it came from. But housing the breath of God inside a vessel of dirt creates a profound, unsettling friction. And that friction explains every internal war you have ever fought. You feel this war every single day. You feel it in your chest. You feel it in your jaw. The alarm clock rings in the dark. The wooden floor is freezing. Your nefesh wants the warm blankets. It wants comfort. It wants to sleep. It wants to consume. It wants to hide. But your neshama wants purpose. Someone insults you to your face. A puff of air to get the lungs expanding. A sudden spark of electricity to jumpstart a fleshy machine so it can stand up. You feel the hot blood rush to your cheeks. Your ruach wants violence. Your ruach wants to shout. It wants to dominate the room. But your neshama demands restraint. You scroll through a screen at midnight. The blue light burns your tired eyes. Your nefesh craves a cheap distraction. It craves the quick dopamine hit. But your neshama is starving for meaning. This is the friction. The dirt pulls down. The heaven pulls up. You are an animal that has been hijacked by the divine. You are walking clay hosting an eternal fire. When you give in entirely to the nefesh, you survive. You win the argument. You buy the object. You protect your own ego. But a quiet, hollow ache remains in your stomach. Because the highest room in your temple is completely dark. This inner conflict is not a character flaw. It is a holy collision. It is the exact proof that the Genesis story is true. If you were only biology, you would never feel guilty for acting like an animal. A wolf does not apologize for killing a sheep. A bird does not lie awake at night, regretting a stolen seed. Biology knows no morality. It only knows survival. But you regret. You apologize. You lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling the heavy, crushing weight of a moral failure. Why? Because the neshama cannot be satisfied with dirt.